So the final video in our series deals with verbal and nonverbal communication, small talk, and sartorial competence in regards to professionalism. So, often I think young people and people who aren't necessarily professionals, but they may be professionals in their sphere, no matter, they could be a postman, they could be a FedEx driver, they could be a programmer, whatever. I think the word professional is very elastic, but one of the things I think students often miss is the role of how you, not only how you perform your professional identity in terms of content and knowledge and engagement with people around information and communication, but also just the social side of things, like making small talk. Often, I'll take my students over to the University of Washington to different talks. They have speakers, they have food, they sit around the table with professionals, and sometimes they want to get into these deep, immersive conversations about emissions and other things. But often, when I get together with professionals, we make small talk. We talk about children, dogs, vacations, sports. Um, the art of small talk, I feel like, is a lost art. It's lost on students, and it's not lost on them when they're engaging with their friends, but it is often lost on them when they're engaging with um, a little, older, more senior adults who they may or may not feel anything in common with, and so then they don't search for, common ground, so to speak, and just talk about, nothing, insignificant things. I'll just say this quickly. Once I had a conversation in San Diego with a new dean of a medical school. I didn't know she was a new dean. I sat down at a table. She had the only seat available in the restaurant at the hotel. I asked her if I could join her. We made small talk. She talked about moving for a new job and having lived. She lived in Miami, and we were in San Diego, which was my hometown, and we talked about nothing. When she got up, she introduced herself and gave me her business card. And lo and behold, she was a new dean of a medical school, dean of admissions at a medical school that's highly selective. And so we sat back down and we talked about that and talked about her admissions process. And 3-minute conversation. Our other small talk conversation was 30 minutes. The result was 3 years later, 2 of our students were admitted into her school's program. So, we didn't really talk admissions. We just found out that we had some things in common, common approach to life, common values, laughed quite a bit, and that had positive implications, repercussions for admissions. So I'm very interested in moving our students in the direction of developing skills in that area, and I want them to see it as an area, just like chemistry, just like biology, where there's resources to help you develop skills, and there's also ways to explore and get in certain kinds of social contexts to develop those skills as well.
The key to networking, according to Jonathan Klein in The Legal Intelligencer, is to be approachable and engaging. It's important to make sure to step out of your comfort zone and talk to people outside of your normal working group. This may sound uncomfortable and difficult, but another article on small talk gives 6 steps for successful small talk to make it easier to perfect the art of small talk. 1 is to identify possible topics before the event. 2 is to search for individuals and establish eye contact. 3 is to introduce yourself and ask an easy, open question. 4 is to actively listen and explore the other person's interest. 5 is to share parts about yourself and highlight the person's interests. And 6 is end with an invitation to meet again. So this could be something like business cards. If you're having a hard time with the concept of small talk, still, an Art of Small Talk video gave a few suggestions on conversation starters. Things to talk about could be restaurant recommendations, movies, plays, enjoyable or thought-provoking readings, travels, challenges, hobbies, holidays and weekends you planned, or insights about work. You could also ask easy, open-ended questions, like how do you know the host, or what do you think of the spectacular view? Could you explain to me how this works, or what is your opinion of ... And hopefully these things will help make this task a little less daunting.
One of the main topics brought up in George Washington's Rules of Civility and Decent Behavior is the idea that you have to respect your company when you're meeting with them. And on point 18, he specifically mentions that no one should ever read a book or a paper while someone else is with them. And I feel like all this kind of goes into George Washington telling people to be respectful to each other in a way that they actually listen to what other people are saying. Oftentimes when you have someone that we're talking to, and if they're like on their phone or not paying attention, it's really difficult to hold a conversation with them because you know that they're not respecting your time. It's important that when we, as pre-med students, engage in small talk with people who are medical professionals or anyone in general, we have to be able to listen to them and be able to not get distracted by reading things or either books or papers, as George Washington mentioned, or our phones is what's super common today. The ability to be able to focus and listen and engage actively in listening to other people while you're talking to them is important in order to build sustaining relationships out of small talk.
A key component of professionalism is your clothing. After all, the first thing people notice is your physical appearance. When developing your professional look, you must always be mindful of your environment. In particular, women face a myriad of barriers to achieving a professional appearance in terms of balancing formality, modesty, and attractiveness. As Anna Reisman writes for The Atlantic, context matters. Depending on your practice location, you may want to don a sleek suit, button down and slacks, a shift dress, or scrubs. Part of being a physician is recognizing the environment you want to work in and developing a way of presenting yourself to fit this idea in lieu of Liz Edwards' self-presenting wardrobe concept. Boyer highlights the importance of purchasing high-quality items as well to ensure consistent professional sartorial style. In sum, one should try to develop some engaging sense of style, bearing in mind Boyer's question, of which group or groups do we seek to be a member?
In the Warbear article, the author mentioned how many times there are students who have a very high ability of being able to communicate well in articles and things that are required like in PhD dissertations and in essays for academic stuff, but are unable to hold a long conversation with people. In the article, it mainly focuses on people who are international students or people who grew up or have English as a second language, but it can definitely be applicable to people who have English as their first language, because many people are now taught formal written English, but are unable to go hold a conversation in real time with real people. And that's a skill that's really important to develop because when you build a relationship with someone, it many times doesn't happen because of an essay that they read or an article that they read of yours. It happens because of what they see and feel when they meet with you in person. And building those skills is very important in order to communicate with people well.
So in order to make a good impression, in addition to perfecting the art of small talk, is dressing well. At first, this may also be intimidating, especially for women whose business attire code is much less rigid than men's. However, what you wear not only affects how you feel about yourself, but how you perform and how you behave. And it also affects how other people perceive you. It is of the utmost importance, therefore, to look refined and confident on the outside in order to do well. Lizzie Edward gives 7 steps for refining your wardrobe so that it can be less intimidating for you to recreate your wardrobe. So the first one is reflect, and then review, and then reorganize, and then rethink, research, replenish, and refine. This systematic way of thinking will hopefully give some organization to a very overwhelming task.
In the article, Small Talk and Making Friends, it talks about how important making friends is by using their name. When you're in a conversation with someone, it's important to be able to remember what their name is and be able to say it. It says don't just say hi to someone, but to say hi and then say their name, like hi John, hi Sarah, whatever. The point is that if you do that, you build a connection with the person you're talking to. And that's very important when you're trying to build a connection with someone, whether it be in the professional world where it's some person who's going to be a part of your pre-med life, or whether it's a part of like someone that you're just trying to be friends with. It's important to remember people's names because that's something that's very personal to them.